Welcome back to Things You Don't Know. Today's topic is deceptively simple. Cheese. No, no, not what's your favorite cheese, though we'll get there. But the bigger questions: who invented it, where the earliest cheeses show up, why humans started doing this at all, and what cheese actually offers nutritionally.
And I'll warn everyone right now, if you think cheese is just milk that got old, you're not wrong. But you're also missing on one of the most important food technologies human beings ever stumbled into.
Well, I want to talk about the science, and I'm also here for the history too, because cheese is one of the few foods that can be both ancient survival strategy and the thing that you eat at midnight over the sink.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. So let's set our ground rule. When we say who invented cheese, the honest answer is we can't name a single inventor.
That's right. Cheese is older than writing in most places, and it likely emerged in multiple regions independently. Wherever people were herding milk producing animals and needed a way to preserve that milk.
Because milk is nutritious, but it spoils fast, especially before refrigeration. Cheese is basically a preservation method that also concentrates calories and nutrients into a more portable form. Now, who exactly invented cheese there, Dr. Weaver?
Well, let's walk listeners through the most plausible origin story. Not the romantic legend version, but the real chemistry of it.
The classic explanation is that early herders carried milk in containers made from animal skins or animal stomachs. The stomach lining contains enzymes, what we call rennet, that naturally coagulate milk. So you would end up with curds and whey, solids and liquid. That's basically the start of cheese making.
And rennet isn't one single substance. It's enzymes, notably chymosin, that act on milk proteins and trigger clotting. That clotting is what gives you curves you can press, salt, and age.
Exactly. Cheese making spread with pastoral economies, trade routes, and other innovations like controlling the aging environments and better curd processing. By medieval times, cheese making had become highly regional, with monastic communities and village tradition shaping recipes, names, and reputations.
And those specific regional differences are part of what triggers our brain to expect certain cheeses when we hear regional names. Manchego from Spain, Gouda from the Netherlands, etc., etc.
Let's break down types beyond soft and hard. What are the main axes?
There are several axes: texture and moisture differences. A soft cheese is a brie, semi-soft Havarti, firm cheddar, hard Parmesan. The milk source varies, whether it's sheep's milk, cow's milk, goat's milk, buffalo milk, or blends. Aging, fresh cheeses, mozzarella and ricotta, or aged, Parmesan and aged cheddar. The processing and culture methods: mold ripened cheese like blue cheese, wash rind like Limburger, or pressed and aged. Regional designations and the uses of cultures or molds.
Yeah, so milk composition and fat content influence mouthfeel and flavor release. The fat traps of volatile compounds. The protein networks create the structure that holds texture. Aging drives enzymatic reactions like proteolysis and lipolysis. Those both release amino acids and fatty acids, shaping umami, tang, and aroma. So, from a psychological angle, That's a classic human pattern. Accidental discovery, followed by repetition once the result is useful. You get a happy accident once, then you build a habit and eventually a craft around it.
And it's not just taste, it's survival. Turning milk into cheese makes it last longer and makes it easier to transport. And critically, fermentation and aging can reduce lactose. So even people who couldn't tolerate much fresh milk could often handle certain other dairy products better.
Which matters because this is fascinating. Humans were using dairy before many populations evolved. Widespread adult lactose digestion, lactase persistence, the the ability to digest lactose into adulthood became common in some groups later under selection pressures tied to dairying.
So, cheese making isn't just a food story, it's tied to human biology and cultural evolution.
Now let's separate two things. The first cheese ever made, which we cannot pinpoint, and the earliest evidence we can verify scientifically.
The big archaeological headline for Europe is chemical evidence from Neolithic pottery sieves in what's now Poland, Caribia, dating to the 6th millennium BCE. Researchers analyzed residues and found milk fats consistent with processing milk in a way that fits cheese making, straining curds from whey.
Yeah, so we're talking roughly what? Somewhere between 7,000 and 9,000 years ago as an evidence-based anchor point for cheesemaking in Northern Europe and other places too.
You know what I like about that is just how low tech it is. Perforated ceramics, which are basically strainers, show up, and then chemistry does the rest of the proof.
There's also a different kind of an oldest cheese story, and it comes from Egypt. A solid cheese residue found in jars in the tomb of Tams at Saqqara, about 3,200 years old, and identified with proteomic analysis.
Yeah, that's a nice contrast. Poland gives us evidence of the process. Egypt gives us a dramatic example of the product, a preserved residue that can actually be analyzed and was.
And that reminds us that cheese making wasn't one narrow tradition. Ancient Mediterranean societies had dairy systems, but the cheeses they made were different in texture, salt levels, and aging, so they could differ radically by both climate and culture.
Also, that Egyptian find came with a modern warning. Pathogens like Brucella can be associated with unpasteurized dairy, and the analysis linked the residue to evidence of brucellosis. And that's not to scare people, it's simply just to underline that dairy safety has always mattered.
Yes, indeed. So, what cheese actually is? That's kind of an interesting topic here. Let's kind of give a clean definition. Cheese is milk that's been coagulated, either by enzymes like Rennet or by acidity, so that solids like curds separate from liquid, which is whey. Then humans manipulate the moisture, salt, microbes, and time.
The four levers, if you want a simple framework, are how you coagulate it, how much moisture you keep, how much salt you add, and how long you age it.
And the microbes are doing real work. Cultures acidify the milk, which helps coagulation and preservation. Aging lets enzymes and bacteria break down proteins and fats into flavor compounds.
Which is why two cheeses can come from the same basic starting point, milk, and taste completely and totally different.
Let's look at the first types of cheeses. If we rewind to early dairying societies, the earliest cheeses were probably fresh, sour, and salty, because those methods are the easiest without precise temperature control.
Fresh cheeses are basically the eat soon cheeses. Think curds, farmer cheeses, some forms of ricotta-like products. They're not trying to become a hard wheel that you age for a year.
Right. And psychologically, that makes sense. People start with what's fast and reliable. Then later, as storage and technique improve, you can get longer aged cheeses, harder, more shelf stable, more concentrated.
Exactly. Hard cheeses are almost like edible time capsules. You're intentionally slowing spoilage by removing water and controlling salt and microbes.
Okay, so one of the burning questions is how many kinds of cheese are there? The answer is, well, quite a lot, but we can group them by style. One modern classification approach breaks cheeses into categories like fresh, soft, semi-soft, semi-hard, hard, blue, processed, and pasta filata. Stretch curd cheeses like mozzarella.
Let's make that vivid with examples without turning it into a grocery list. Fresh cheeses are high moisture, mild tang. Soft ripened cheeses have a bloomy rind and a creamy interior, microbes working from the outside in. Washed rind cheeses are pungent because you're washing the exterior and encouraging particular bacteria.
Blue cheeses are their own psychological experience for some people. I That's one of my favorite cheeses, I would have to
Yeah,
say.
I like blue cheese too pretty well.
Oh, yeah.
And why is that? Why is blue cheese so different?
Well, because the mold is visible, but blue is a controlled mold, part of the intended process. It's actually a feature, not a failure, when produced safely.
Now, hard aged cheeses, cheddar like families, Alpine styles, Parmesan style grating cheeses tend to be lower in moisture, more concentrated, and historically great for storage and trade.
And processed cheese, it's a controversial word, I realize, exists because people wanted stable melt behavior and shelf life. That's still a human need story. Convenience and consistency, once again.
Now, there's also one category that people tend to forget, and that's brined cheeses. Yes, brined cheeses like feta. Actually, I like feta. I haven't tried much feta, but from what I've tried, I actually like that. Salt and storage in brine matter as much as aging.
Time for a quick regional tour and the vibes they bring. Here's some quick highlights. In Europe, we have Gouda in the Netherlands, Cheddar in England, Parmigiano Reggiano in Italy, Roquefort in France, Macheco in Spain, and Gruyere in Switzerland. In the Middle East and Africa, we have halloumi in Cyprus, sisal in Turkey, and aged goat cheeses in North Africa. In the Americas, we have varieties of cheddar in the United States and Canada, queso fresco and panela in Latin America, and aged cheeses in Canada and the U.S. Northeast. In Asia and the Pacific, we have Paneer in India, that's very good. And certain washed rind varieties influence Japanese imports, evolving into local blends in China, Australia, and New Zealand.
Each region's cheese reflects its terroir. That means climate, flora, and that's forage for feed, where the animals are raised, and aging environments. The microflora in caves or aging rooms is almost a cultural signature. Let's look at some other things like nutritional value. But we need to do this kind of carefully. Cheese isn't one uniform thing. A fresh, low-fat, cottage-style cheese, an aged cheddar, and a hard grating cheese can have very, very different numbers.
But we can use a familiar baseline. 1 ounce, about 28 grams of cheddar, is roughly 114 calories, about 6.5 grams of protein, about 9.5 grams of fat, and around 5.4 grams of saturated fat. Sodium is around 185 milligrams, and calcium approximately 200 milligrams.
That's the historical irony. The very feature that made cheese so valuable, concentration and preservation, are why it can be calorie dense and salty.
Absolutely, Dr. Deneen. And the upside is that cheese is a concentrated source of protein and minerals, especially calcium and phosphorates. If you look at calcium as a daily reference point, the U.S. daily value for adults and children age 4 and up is 1,300 milligrams. So 200 milligrams in an ounce of cheddar is quite meaningful.
So cheese can genuinely contribute to meeting nutrient needs, especially for people who struggle to get enough protein or calcium from other sources.
On the other hand, saturated fat and sodium add up fast if portions creep. That's why broad dietary guidance often emphasizes choosing nutrient-intense forms of dairy and balancing saturated fat and sodium across the whole diet.
And then there's another nuance. Aging affects lactose. Many aged cheeses end up with very low lactose. That's part of why some lactose intolerant people can tolerate certain cheeses better than milk. It's not magic, it's fermentation chemistry and time.
Important caveat. Some people, some people. Everyone's tolerance differs.
Also, people ask if cheese is inflammatory. That's a big internet debate. The safe, evidence grounded statement is for most people, dairy can fit into a balanced diet. For those with allergy intolerance or specific medical advice, it's different. And different cheeses, fat content, sodium, processing, well, they all play significant roles as well.
Yes, you're right. Allergies, intolerance, specific medical issues, all of those can make a difference, as you say. So let's do a short myth round. Just a few, no theatrics.
Okay, so myth one, mold on cheese means that it's unsafe. Well, that can be true in some cases, but in reality, in blue and surface ripened cheeses, molds are actually part of the design in an unintended context, like fuzzy growth on a cheese not meant to have it. That can be a little bit different.
Myth two, cheese was invented by one genius. Reality, it is a craft that likely emerged multiple times because the conditions, milk, herding, containers, microbes, were widespread.
Myth number 3, all cheese is basically the same nutritionally. Reality, there's a huge variation. Some cheeses are higher protein grounds, some are higher sodium, some are higher fat, some are fresh and lighter, and others are dense and aged.
And the practical takeaway is moderation plus intention. Decide what role cheese is playing: protein boost, flavor accent, calcium source, or just pleasure, and portion accordingly. In science terms, cheese pairing is another topic here, and it often considers fat content, acidity, and pungency. Paired with wine, beer, fruit, bread, each pairing changes how the brain perceives flavor through multi-sensory integration.
Quick tips here for beginners. You want to start off with mild, fresh cheeses like mozzarella or ricotta to appreciate the texture. Then eventually you can move to semi-soft like Havarti or Gouda to note sweetness and creaminess. Try aged cheeses like Parmesan, aged cheddar to experience umami and complexity. Use bread, fruit, jam, and nuts to build flavor contrasts.
And don't forget the cultural context. The way a cheese is produced, the aging environment, and the history behind it all contribute to the entire eating experience. When you look at human food history, cheese making is a technology that turned a fragile, perishable resource, milk, into something storable, tradable, and culturally distinctive. It supported settlement patterns, trade routes, and regional identity.
It's also one of the best examples of humans partnering with microbes.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
pretty cool comparison, I think. But see, people didn't even know biology for most of history, but they mastered the outcomes.
Somehow. And psychologically, cheese is a perfect case study in how tradition becomes taste. Many cheeses are acquired tastes, shaped by culture, exposure, and memory. The same smell that reads spoiled to one person reads perfectly ripe to another. Well, look, that is our deep dive on cheese. Not one inventor, but a human solution that shows up early and spreads everywhere because it solves real problems.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next time you see a simple wedge in a store, remember you're looking at a food with roots going back thousands of years with archaeological fingerprints in pottery and tombs.
And if you want to keep it practical, check portions, notice sodium and saturated fat, and remember that cheese can be a strong contributor to protein and calcium, especially in small amounts.
Hey, listen, if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a rating, drop a comment with your unexpected cheese opinion. The one you'd defend in public, maybe, huh?
Civilly and historically, we prefer, folks, but any comments are welcome.
And preferably with snacks nearby. And yes, please comment and subscribe.
And okay, for Chandler Foster and Dr. Sean Deneen, I'm saying goodbye for now. Come on back and see us soon. Bye.